Welcome back to the Changing Earth podcast with author Sarah F. Hathaway and co-host Chen Gibson. Blending survival, fiction, and fact to bring you entertaining education that will help you dream, survive, and thrive. And now, here's your host, Sarah F. Hathaway and Chen Gibson.
Basically, cosmic rays are energy particles that are traveling through space, and several dozen hit you every second. They're really low because typically our magnetic shield on our planet protects us. So we don't have to worry about those kind of things. But they actually think that the spatial radiation can, or cosmic rays can cause genetic mutations, and they're a driver of evolution because we're constantly bombarded with this energy, which I thought was kind of cool, right? So obviously, as you come off of the ground, the higher that you get, the more these increase, the more the rays increase. And once you get above 9 miles up, they just start increasing exponentially. So if you think about like 9 miles off the surface is not really like that high. So our shield's only keeping them that far away, right? I thought that was kind of neat. Most of the ones we actually get hit with are secondary energy because of them colliding in our atmosphere. So it's secondary radiation from these collisions that happen in our atmosphere. The magnetic shield protects us. I'm going to say that a lot during tonight's show because we're losing our magnetic shield. This is one of the biggest problems and why this is becoming like even more of an issue. So they've done a lot of studying on this space weather and how it affects human beings in the past. It's not like it's a new thing. So I found a spectacular article on abruptearthchanges.com. It's called Space Weather, Its Effect on Human Health and Behavior. It's by David Hyde and Ben Davidson. So if you want to link that, Chin.
Is it Dr. Hyde?
By David Hyde and Ben Davidson.
Jekyll and Hyde.
Jekyll and Hyde. Yes. Yes. But it was spectacular. I mean, it lays it out pretty simplistic. It's not because I was looking for the Russian, like the research that they did on rats and things like this. But this article, I think, was even better than that information. So
Space weather in effect to human health and behavior?
Yep. Its effect on human health and behavior. Yep. Yeah, you can go ahead and link that one over there. That'd be great for everybody because this is where it's at. And if you're like a nerdy earth junkie like I am, you'll appreciate having like the raw data, where it's sourced to, where you can go find more information and all that. So obviously we're just going to scratch the surface because we only have a little bit of time. But go check it out if you're into doing some heavy reading as well. So 1926, at a meeting of the American Meteorological Society, this Russian professor, Alexander Chejevsky, presented a paper called Physical Factors of the Historical Process. And in this paper, he examined the cyclical variation in sunspot number in the solar cycles compared to the patterns that happen with humanity throughout history. And what he found was when there's sunspots maximums going on, like we're entering right now, these are periods of revolution and intense fighting. And then when we're in minima, it's cultural flourishing and social cohesion. So, that was back in 1926 that he started going, I think there's a pattern here, So the sun is constantly ejecting these streams of anodes and cathode rays, and they ionize the Earth's atmosphere and create certain effects. So they basically electrify our atmosphere. This can have effects in humans that are chemical changes in your skin pigmentation, changes in your heartbeat, the chemical composition of your blood, and general condition of the organism and nervous tenacity. So basically, our chemical mix-ups inside of our bodies go a little bit wonky when we're getting bombarded by different energies. Pretty interesting. That's why I pay attention to this stuff, because I have to deal with the public so much. I'm like, okay, man, how's everybody?
What's it going to be like today in the office?
Yeah. So Stalin asked Alexander to retract his statements in 1946 because it wasn't in line with like their communist explanation of what happened during the Russian revolutions and things like that. And dude was like, no, I'm not retracting it. That's scientific data, da-da-da-da-da. He spent 8 years in jail. I thought that was just kind of interesting, you know. Stand for your principles, man. Stand for your principles. So this plasma that ejects off our sun, if you guys have been listening to me for a long time, you know about coronal mass ejections, that kind of thing. Well, this plasma is constantly being sloughed off of our sun, and it emanates away from the solar surface and stretches out all the way past Pluto. And obviously, the closer your planet is to the sun, the more affected you are by it. So the charged ions, they flow along these electromagnetic currents that actually tether the planet to the sun. And then the sun has its own sphere, and every planet has its own magnetic sphere. So you have like this dynamo of this magnetism that holds our whole solar system together. And it's all composed of energy and magnetism that makes it all work properly. And all of this combined together forms the protective shell for our whole solar system called the heliosphere. The Earth itself has the magnetosphere that since 2000, this article was published in 2017, and since then they've noticed a 15% loss in the past 150 years. Well, the faster we lose our magnetic shield, the faster the increase in loss speeds up even more. So since then, it's just been, you can look at the curve. Ben has it up on Suspicious Observers all the time, and it is just a drop. I mean, it's just dropping off. And that means our shield's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. That means we have less and less protection for this stuff, right? So the sun has the grand minimum cycles. The Maunder and the Dalton were significant minima cycles. And we really just came out of one. That we were in a period of the Maunder minimum, they call it. And when we're in this minimum cycle, it correlates with a shift in the North Atlantic Oscillation, which leads to the northeasterly winds and the cooling in Europe. So we've been doing a lot of weather research, right? We just got hit with nor'easters. And Europe's been having a really rough winter. So right now we're actually just on the uptick going into the next maxima. We just came off a minima. We're going to go into a maximum. And the sun's going crazy right now. It's a miracle we don't get blasted by more CMEs, more significant CMEs on a... Because, man, there's so many sunspots, like so much potential for it to happen every day. And it's just like, oh, it went by quietly again. Whew. Right. You know, I'm just like, oh, my God, look at that one coming in. They're like huge clouds. These sunspots that come across the corona are just like these huge spots. And some of them are positively charged and some of them are negatively charged. And then when that gets together, that's what causes the blast off.
It's crazy to watch when they show like the sun surface and they show it like whoop, bursting out of the sun.
And there's also solar rain that happens when it like goes up and then it rains back down onto the sun. Like these it's pretty neat. It's pretty neat stuff. So these solar cycles happen in about 11-year cycle and a 22-year magnetic cycle. And this was discovered by the scientist by the name of Schwab in 1851. And he was saying that the 1851. I bet you that's 1951. That seems really early, but I could be wrong. And he was saying how much it has just a way bigger effect on our planet than it does on humans. But we've come a long way since then. The heliosphere and the magnetic sphere, they work together to protect the Earth from these rays and these high-speed energy particles. So when the particles come in, they can strip away the ozone and the atmosphere.
I thought it was the hairspray that was stripping away the
right,
ozone.
The O3. I know.
Yeah.
It's 'cause
Remember that years ago?
Yeah.
Everybody was like, you had to change your hairspray.
Yeah. Yeah, off of the aerosol cans to the pump cans or whatever. Because, we were all spraying too much O3 into the air.
All that big hair during the 80s and the 90s.
It did it.
Those rock bands.
It was just, yeah. I do remember that. Catholic school. Yeah.
Sorry, squirrel.
Hey, we got Pepe in the house.
I know. He's got his tinfoil hat on.
Yeah.
Getting ready for you.
Yeah, you got to, because we're talking cosmic rays here. You need your tinfoil hats. Okay, so these high-speed energy particles, they can strip ozone, they can strip atmosphere. And there's major ozone weakening going on right now, despite our not using O3 cans anymore. And they're attributing this to the weakening magnetic shield. Mm-hmm. The particles actually induce cloud formation, so they can cause crazy weather, right? Like massive flooding that just happens in an hour and then is gone. And they can also do super lightning charges on our planet and just ramp up that lightning. Record amounts of lightning. And last week we talked about the lightning bolt, I think we did, that stretched over Texas, Louisiana, and Oklahoma. It was like 400 miles long or something. It was crazy. Jeez. Yeah. And then
Don't fly a kite in that weather.
Right? Yeah. Ben Franklin would have been toast, man. It also greatly affects regional temperatures. So, just talking about this stuff, and you can read this paper that happened in 2017, and the more you learn about this, the more when you find these different informational sources, you can start correlating everything together in a way that makes sense. So the heliosphere and the magnetic sphere are stronger during solar maximum and weaker during the minimum. They have this inverse relationship between solar activity and cosmic ray activity, or CRA, they call it. The CME is just this massive burst of solar wind that happens, and they describe the effect of it on our planet with the word geoeffectiveness. This is actually the CME's ability to generate geostorms on the planet. So when we talk about a CME that is an M class, an M1, it really doesn't have the effect to generate these geostorms on the planet. It doesn't have that kind of power to do that. When the magnetosphere deflects charged particles, so the magnetic sphere deflects all these charged particles. They're always hitting the magnetosphere. And when a CME sweeps past, it sweeps all that electrical energy with it. And they call this a four-bush decrease. And that's why they have a negative correlation. So when the solar activity ramps up, it blows the CME out, and it takes away all that cosmic ray activity. So it's actually kind of interesting. Because I was like, that doesn't make sense. But it does, if you think about it, as the CME is actually pulling all that energy with it as it goes past. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So the CME, though, can affect our Earth and make these geomagnetic storms. So it's kind of like out of the pan into the fryer kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And it's marked by the appearance of the Aurora Borealis. When we had that M class last week, we had huge Aurora Borealises at both poles, and then these will expand down to the equator. The extreme geomagnetic storms actually produce ground currents that affects all sorts of electronics. So this is where, like, you need your Faraday cage so that it doesn't come along the ground and just fry out your electronics. Found that rather interesting, too. And I was reading an article the other day about these experiments that Tesla was doing where he was actually using in-ground power systems to electrically charge the Earth. And then he could light up light bulbs, like, out to 100 feet out. And they weren't even plugged in.
That's crazy.
Isn't it? Nobody's been able to replicate what he was doing. But they correlate that a lot to ancient aliens theories and like the significance of stones and stuff at different magnetic points of our planet. Maybe they were using it to set up this type of a power grid instead of what we have going on. So
and all of his neighbors had their hair standing on end.
Yeah. It happened in Colorado. He did the experiment out in Colorado. It was really neat. But that's basically what a CME does. It comes in and just, boom, charges up the surface of the Earth, which is crazy. And our atmosphere can cause all the lightning and everything like that. So there's a wide variety, if it does all of that, it's affecting the human body. Our body runs on electrical stimuli. So it is going to directly affect the functions of the brain, the heart, and the nervous system. It actually affects the lighting modulation of our world and then triggers the increased lightning. Another interesting thing that I took away about the lightning was that every lightning emits these photons that get caught in between the surface of our planet and a boundary about 60 miles high. And they call this the Schumann resonance, SR range. And it goes from 3 hertz to 60 hertz, and you can detect that on any planet that has lightning. So the brain is this massive source of extremely low frequency signals. And it transmits these signals through your body via the nervous system, and it's very sensitive to these magnetic fields. Other animals like doves, that you use for homing pigeons. Homing pigeons, right?
Yeah.
And they have racing pigeons too that they run these races with and things. They lost like 1,000 racing pigeons at this one race because the geomagnetism of our planet is so thrown off right now.
They probably just all went down to the pub and said,
yeah, they're like,
flying to these guys anymore.
We're going to get some food, man. But if you look at the stories that are pop up in the news, they found these sea stars, the stars that are in the ocean. Like
starfish.
Starfish, like up towards Michigan and all that. And I was like, what? Starfish in Michigan? This is like freshwater. They've had whales in the wrong place. They've had all kinds of sea life just, showing up on beaches and whatnot at the wrong time of year. And it's because this magnetic force of our planet is what...
Oh, it's messing with their navigation.
Exactly. That's what everybody orients to. Exactly. So beyond that happening, it can alter our blood pressure, our melatonin rates. It increases cancer. It can cause problems to the reproductive system, cardiac health, and neurological disease and death. You can die, man. So they found this out because they were studying these Schumann resonances. And the frequencies actually coincide with the first 4 frequency that's in an EEG band. The delta, the theta, the alpha, and the beta. So they're actually the same exact frequencies. So when you start pumping all this energy into our planet, it starts, hitting our body as well. Using the same frequencies that our bodies do. Really crazy stuff, right? We're all connected. Yes, we are. We are all connected in energy.
So I just typed in, Schumann resonancy, and one of the things that popped up is Schumann resonance. It's called the heartbeat of Mother Earth.
Exactly.
Is that crazy?
Yeah, and it's what really connects us all together.
Yeah, it's what you were just saying.
Yeah. It's cool. It was really neat. That's why I was like, I'm going to learn you something. And I learned a whole bunch. I was like geeking out today. I'm like, this is awesome.
It's crazy to think that, I mean, we all think, oh, we're, whatever.
Yeah.
But everything's so tied together, right?
Yeah. Well, growing up a Christian, God is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
there you go.
There you go. I mean, it's everywhere. It's in all of us. So changes in space weather and solar wind lead to disturbances in this environmental electromagnetic field, which can severely alter cellular calcium ion fluxes and electromagnetic radiation waves in the brain. Days of high neuron activity, the CRA, they've done reports and found that there's more medical emergency and deaths on the days when there's a higher CRA level. So that's really weird, that you can correlate it out and it's legit. It makes people's hearts work harder and things like that. There's a really strong trend of sudden cardiac death happening on these days. That we have the high CRA energy. And if you listen to Ben, sometimes the CMEs aren't only the worst part. We get bombarded with the solar radiation sometimes as just a side effect of a CME blowing off, right? Might not be directed at us, but we're still getting the side spew of it. And that's when we have those really high CRA days. Severe geomagnetic storms correlated with anxiety, sleep disturbances, altered moods, and greater psychiatric admission. Yeah. I tell you, sometimes my clients go nutso. And then increase of headaches, and mostly in the emotional status of an organism is where we're feeling this. It's kind of like Brian says, that energy that you feel will supercharges up that energy. Other effects include that they're doing studies on is infant mortality rates, suicide rates, traffic accidents, and crime rates on these higher days. So I found that really, really neat. Because I was yeah, I've heard about the rats and their cognitive abilities went down. Their hearts had to work harder and they died and da-da-da-da-da. But that article there was really good at bringing all of it together in a really cohesive way that you could understand. I read a lot of space stuff, but I'm thinking the average bear could understand that pretty well. So what do you think? You ready for some spatial bombardment? Another reason to go underground. Uh-oh.
I thought you didn't like to be underground.
I don't like to be underground, but I tell you what, it was so cold during that winter storm that I was what would I rather be? Really cold or underground? I don't like cold. I don't like underground either, so. But that's a way that a lot of, humans have survived in the past when we've had these types of events that happen. So I guess we got to think about that reluctantly. All right, let's go ahead and get into some Changing Earth news. That was a quick one today. I just wanted to learn you something. And I didn't want to overwhelm,
It's kind of makes you think outside the box, like I was saying, things are really tied together, which we don't always think.
Right.
We get too caught up on the, human way of doing things, and it's really bigger than just us.
Yeah. On what affects our bodies, and that affects our brains, and that affects what we do. Yeah, interesting stuff.
Thank you for joining Sarah and Chen for this episode of the Changing Earth podcast. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Day After Disaster at www.authorSarahFHathaway.com. If you love the Changing Earth series and podcast, become a